So how you doing with giving lately? Are you doing good? So we started a series a few weeks back on being a go-giver. True? And one of the things that I truly believe is that most of us have a stuck place when it comes to giving. And that our spiritual journey, our spiritual life, our spiritual progress really depends on us getting beyond our stuck place. Because each and every soul is infinite. But we have such a system created in our world today that fears going and giving too much. We have such a collective story about burnout. Like that we could actually burn our soul out. Right? And what if tonight you had a significant breakthrough in your soul's willingness to play at a bigger level? Now, hear me. I'm not saying that you don't have to feed your soul. But what I am saying is the things that most of us are getting burned out about are not big enough for what we came here for. And what if tonight you found the next level of your personal giving and were willing to give in a bigger, more amazing way than ever before? Would you be interested in that? By really giving from your most authentic self. See, one of the things that happens over and over again is when we're not being our real self, it gets much more exhausting than when we give from our real self. Can you see the distinction? That each one of us has spiritual gifts, if you will, that as we give from our spiritual giftedness, it's actually God in us giving through us. When we're doing it from our personality gets tired, our humanness gets tired, our humanness gets burned out, our humanness gets worn out, but it's because we're giving from really the wrong aspect of self. And so what if tonight you were willing to really give from your divine nature more than just from your personality? What if you were willing to unleash your essence, your Christ spirit, your Buddha spirit, your divine spirit, your central core? Because I got to tell you, these talks have made such a profound impact on my own life. And really unleashing, I feel like, the next level of me. And what's true for one can be true for all. So what if tonight, whatever keeps you from giving the best that's within you, you were willing to let that go? Okay? So let's do the recap of the last several weeks. Let's shoot that right up on the screen if we can. So the first one we worked on was the law of value. And the law of value says that our true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment. And one of the things that we talked about on that first week was this idea that if you're giving that much and you're receiving that much, that's even Steven. And most of us look at that as a perfect relationship. The idea that as I give, then I only want that much in return. The problem is that most of us actually want more than that in return. True? Right? So what really happens is if we're giving this much and we're getting this much back, we start cheating the system a bit. Right? So then we just kind of peel off a little bit, and then a little bit, and a little bit, until we feel like we're actually trying to cheat the system. what I challenged you to do that first week was actually give at that level, right? And then what happens is there creates this space, right? And this space then is really an interesting opportunity because what most of us use that space for is resentment, right? Now, if you use that for resentment, how much of a blessing do you get in return? No, you just use the blessing for resentment. So if you're going to be resentful about how much you're giving, I want you to really enjoy being resentful. Like, I really want you to enjoy being resentful because that's the big prize that you just chose, right? It's like, let's make a deal. So you just chose resentment. So if you're going to choose resentment, really talk about it to everybody, walk around in it, just chew it up, just eat it up for all it's worth because that was your big prize. Now, what happens if you don't choose resentment? Instead, is you can get a blessing. Because what's so amazing about the universe is that the universe, you can never outgive God. So if you're giving in a greater way than you're receiving, it now becomes God's job to figure out how to bless you. Right? And it may not come from the exact place where you're giving it, but it's going to come back. Right? So in the first week, I really challenge you to create this blessing space, to really put your giving out there in greater and greater ways. Now, let's go back to the slide if we can. The second week, we focused on the law of compensation. And the law of compensation says that your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. And the two challenges that I gave you that week were to look at the number of people you're serving and the level of excellence that you're doing it in, right? And to really look at your personal commitment to excellence in your life, right? Because most of us have a story why we consistently don't do excellence. It's too hard, it's too much, they don't deserve it, whatever. And the challenge was, that week, I invited you to increase the number of people you were giving to and to give to them at a higher level of excellence than you normally do, and to feel how that feels to give at a higher level of excellence. How many of you played with that week? Right? Great, fabulous. Okay, third week, last week. Now, last week was interesting, because last week was about the law of influence. And the law of influence says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. So how many of you were taught that the influence that you have over others of the world is based on how much money you have? Right? Have you ever heard on the news about who's influencing the elections or anything like that, right? Based on how much money they have, all right? So how many of you thought it's how much power you have? That power creates influence. Nobody? Two. Okay, great. How about position? Like if I get an important position, now I'm going to have influence, right? And the whole premise of this book was this idea that the amount that you give creates influence. That when you're giving to others at your highest level, you actually create influence. You have, by your giving, you inspire people and are given a higher level of influence. Then I was given this video. It was sent to me. Mark Hushke. Where's Mark? I know he's here. Mark's there. All right. So are we ready for the video? This was on YouTube. There's a couple of them. Roberta, you sent me one that was fabulous too. Let's play this one. I want to.
เขาจะได้อะไรถ้าเขาทำแบบนี้ทุกวัน
เ
เขาจะไม่ได้อะไรเลย ไม่ได้รวยขึ้น ไม่ได้ออกทีวี ไม่มีใครรู้จัก ไม่ได้มีชื่อเสียงที่มากขึ้น เพราะสิ่งที่เขาได้คือได้แค่ความรู้สึก ได้เห็นความสุข ได้เข้าใจ ได้ความรัก ได้ในสิ่งที่เงินซื้อไม่ได้ ได้โลกที่สวยงามกว่าเดิม ในชีวิตคุณ อะไรคือสิ่งที่คุณต้องการมากที่สุด
ไทยประกันชีวิต
How great is that, huh? Right? So what was the premise that I gave you last week? I just want to kind of round this up, and then I'm going to move on to this week. So the premise I gave you last week is if you go the extra mile, it actually creates more influence. Is that what happened in that video? Now, did everybody around him think he was being a sucker, a sap, like being taken advantage of, right? So can you imagine that your ego is always saying that to you? That every time you get to the edge of what you think is appropriate to give, your ego begins to scream if your soul wants to go one step beyond that, right? And so we feel like we're less than, like we didn't do it right, like we're stupid, like we didn't, if we go one step beyond what our ego tells us we're supposed to give. And yet scripturally, over and over again, we're taught to what? To go the extra mile. True? And then what happens is the impact that you have becomes greater. Do you see that? The influence that you have on the world becomes greater. Because everybody holds back. Everybody holds back. And so when you don't hold back, the world notices. When you give in a significant way, the world notices. And the influence that you have, because people then trust you, goes up tremendously. So how many of you practiced taking one step beyond what your ego told you that you were able to do last week? Right? Does that make sense? Did you try that? Right? Over and over again, I want you to take your next step. Okay, so tonight, we're talking about authenticity. Now, the question then becomes, if we're talking about authenticity, why is authenticity important when it comes to giving? And the bottom line is that authenticity is important because if you're not giving your real self, if you're not giving your best self, then you're out of integrity with yourself. And so when it comes to giving at the highest level, right, what we see is that if you want to give at the highest level, you have to be giving your best self, your real self. Does anybody follow politics at all? I'm a little political junkie. I have to admit I am. I watch it. I'm a little political junkie. And one of the things that's interesting now that we're kind of getting close to the, and I'm not going to take a side for whatever, but one of the things that's interesting about politics is you begin to get a sense who are the politicians that are talking a line And who are the ones that actually believe in what they're saying? Because to run for president, you're on 24/7. You're working 20 hours a day. You're getting up and you're doing it the next day. And what begins to happen is you begin to hear the ones that are just using words and the ones that are really sharing what they believe. And the reason that it's so grueling is so that you can actually discern what they really believe. Because you can live a lie for a while. You can live a lie for a long while. But eventually, if you're living a lie, it catches up. And what I want you to see is what it feels like to live your authentic life. Because most of the time, the person that we're lying to is ourselves. We keep doing this dance because we actually believe that's who we're supposed to be. And what if tonight you made an inner decision that you were just going to be your best self? That you were just going to be your real self? Whether people liked it or didn't like it, agreed with it or didn't agree with it, that you were going to give your real self to the world. That there'd be a level of honesty and integrity, that you were just going to show up as you. And you were going to find out if the person that you really are is enough. Now, how many of us grew up in a family where we learned that to survive in that family structure, we learned that we had to be different? Anybody else learn that, right? So we learned how to be different. So we would then became any puppy who would pet us, right? So whoever would pet us, we would be that. And many of us over and over again began to learn how to be fake, phony, artificial, whatever, based on what anybody around us wanted us to be, because we thought that was the way to get loved, to be successful, to be whatever. And tonight, could you imagine that the way God created you is 100% the way you're supposed to be? 100%. And that you could actually trust who you are in every situation to be enough. Can you feel the freedom of that? Can you feel how much easier it is just to be consistently you day and night, right and left, no matter what's going on, you just get to be you. Okay? Let me go to the book, because this really is my favorite chapter in the book. The book that we've been using is Go Givers by Berg and Mann. And the chapter on authenticity is, because it's a fictional story that they bring out these principles. Let me just read from page 92. As long as you're trying to be someone else, or putting on some act or behavior someone else taught you, you have no possibility of truly reaching people. The most valuable thing that you have to give people is yourself. No matter what you think you're selling, what you're really offering is you. So what if the way that you give yourself to life becomes the thing that you give? What if you're the gift? What if you're the package? What if you're the thing? And your job is to find ways to give you your real self, your real ability, your real talents, your real self to the world. Would that interest you? Because I think it's all we ever really get. Right? Because there's this maturing that happens, I think, for all of us, right? I remember a conversation I had with my mom, and I was in college, and my buddies, my buddies were fun, right? They weren't really deep at the time, right? But they were a ton of fun, right? And my buddies in college, we all rode crew. It was fun, and we had a great time together. And I remember a time when my mom said, "Why don't you share with your friends who you really are?" Because my mom always knew that there was something different, a little odd about the boy, right? So she said, why don't you share with them who you really are? Because, you know, in college, I really just completely shut down my spiritual life. Completely shut it down because I was just going to be fun, right? So I remember saying to my mom, I turned to her with just my 20-something arrogance, and I said to her, well, you're not supposed to throw your pearls before swine. Ooh. Man, is that just the most arrogant thing you've ever heard a 20-year-old say, right? It's just arrogant, right? Even to this day, it still gets me, right? But the idea was I didn't feel safe with my buddies at the time sharing the thing that was the most valuable to me, which was my relationship with God. And in my 20s, I really thought I could just park it. That I could go be the fun guy, the guy that was jumping off bridges and doing all the crazy stuff I did in college, and then I could just some point come back to it. Well, it turns out I did. But what happened in my 20s, as most of us remember in our 20s, is that they were a pretty shallow experience for me. Right? They were just not a lot of depth, not a lot of meaning. Because I really believe that we're here to grow and to mature into the best version of ourselves. So here, let me give you some ideas of how to do that. How to create an authentic life. Number one, from time to time, I want you to redefine what's important to you. Like in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, your 70s, throughout different stages of your life, different things are important to you. That the things that maybe when you're 20s aren't so important to you in your 40s. And maybe the things that are important to you in your 40s aren't so important to you in your 60s. So to live an authentic life, the first thing I want you to look at is to answer the question, what's really important to me? And to actually know what that answer is for you. 2, I want you to foster a level of curiosity. One of the homework assignments I'm going to give you tonight is I want you to answer a question once a day for 30 days, 20 days, you pick. But I want you to answer the same question over and over again for 20 days to really listen to how you respond to it. And the question is, if anything is possible today, what would I do? If literally anything was possible today, what would I do? 3, if I was totally honest with myself, or if I felt unconditionally loved, I would say, do, or be what? If I was totally honest with myself, or if I felt unconditionally loved. Now, do you know why I added the unconditional love? Because for some of us, without the presence of unconditional love, we aren't willing to rest by being more than we think is okay. So if I felt totally unconditionally loved, what would I say? What would I do? Who would I be? 4 is about noticing all the times when you're inauthentic. Now, how do you know when you're being inauthentic? Anybody? For me anyway, there's kind of a gut check. Like in your gut, in your heart of hearts, in your soul, every time you're not being authentic, there's a little bit of goes, ugh. Does anybody else have that experience? Or maybe some of us have the little angel that whispers in our ear, the good angel and the bad angel. But for me, the way I do it is I know in my gut when I'm not being authentic. There's a part of me that just goes, ugh, right? So what I want you to do is pay attention to that. That anytime you feel uncomfortable with what you just did or said, I'm going to suggest it wasn't authentic. And then I actually want you to slow down and ask yourself a different question. If I didn't respond that way, what would be an authentic way for me to respond to that situation? So that we're instantly making a new choice. Because sometimes we just feel bad about it, but we don't really learn anything. So we keep making the same choices over and over and over again because we don't really ask ourselves, well, what choice would have felt more authentic? How could I handle that in a way that felt better to me, that was more in alignment with who I really am, so that we actually get to learn from it? And then 5. 5 is probably the most important one. And 5 is about trusting your intuition. Because to be authentic, we have to trust that what the Spirit of God in us is revealing is the most important thing. Okay, so you ready for your homework? You ready for today? So today is all about this principle, this idea that you now have 24 hours to practice. You have all week, but I want you to try at least once in the first 24 hours with the deal. So in the first 24 hours, I want you to practice being more authentic and giving from your realest place, giving from your soul, giving from your truth. I've given you a few questions. Pick one of them. Just pick one of them. And begin to live more and more in a way that's just in integrity with yourself. How many of you grew up in a religion where they told you how to live? Anybody? Right? And one of the benefits of that, like the whole 10 Commandment thing, one of the benefits of that is if you follow the 10 Commandments, it actually keeps you close. You know what I mean by that? That if you follow the 10 Commandments, you're not going to stray too far from your own center. But there's an amazing thing happens. If you look at it from a metaphysical point of view, the 10 Commandments happened, just in the whole book of the Bible, the 10 Commandments happened before we had an experience with the Christ. Now, symbolically, what that means is that in the beginning of our spiritual life, we need some pretty rigorous rules to keep us safe. But once we begin to feel the Christ, the Spirit of God within us, the authority of our life moves from external to where? Internal. It now becomes God in us that's guiding us. And here's what I'm inviting you into. The authority for your authenticity is the Spirit of God within you. And you truly know when you're out of integrity with yourself and when you're being the best version of yourself. I want you to trust that. And I want you to find ways this week to give from your truest self, your best self, the greatness that is within you. Are you willing to do that? I have one more quote. And even though I'm out of time, I have to read this quote. Will you just forgive me if I go over today just because I have to read this quote? Okay, thank you. Because I was trying to talk myself out of reading it. But it's such a good quote that I just have to go back. And it's from the book, and I've shared a lot from this book, but it's Anita Moorjani, Dying to Be Me. And if you haven't read this book, I think this book is an anthem of authenticity. It really is. It is the anthem of how to be in integrity with your spiritual self. This is on the last page of the book. And if it's not the very last page, it's really the last page of the book. I would want you to know that every part of you is magnificent. Your ego, your intellect, your body, your spirit, it's who you are. A beautiful product of the universal creation. Every aspect of you is perfect. There's nothing to let go of, nothing to forgive, nothing to attain. You are already everything you need to be. It can seem to be so complicated, but it's not. If a religion makes you feel less than its deity, then you are either misinterpreting it or it's not doing a good job of teaching you the truth. If a guru, teacher, or master makes you feel that you aren't quite yet enlightened and you still have more to learn, to release, or to let go of before you actually get there, then they're not doing a good job of teaching you the truth, that you're already complete. Remind everyone close to you to be themselves. Tell them that they are loved just the way they are. They are perfect, and so are you. There is nothing that cannot be loved. Most suffering stems from feeling less than. You aren't less than anything or anyone. You are complete. The only thing you need to learn is that you are already what you seek. Just express your unique, fearlessly, with abandonment. That's why you've made it this far, and that will be your trip home. Isn't that great? Okay, so guess what your homework is? I will be me. Together, I will be me. I will give my gifts to the world. Together, I will give my gifts to the world. I will be exactly the way God created me, whole, free, and perfect in every way. Together, I will be exactly the way God created me, whole, free, and perfect in every way. Let's pray. So tonight, it's absolutely about you being you. Not somebody else, not somebody wiser, smarter, better. This is about you being you. Trusting you. Trusting the way God made you. Trusting yourself. Trusting the Spirit. Trusting the divine. Trusting your own intuition and guidance. Trusting what feels right to you. That you were created in the image and likeness of God. You are whole and complete and lacking in nothing. You are God's Spirit expressing. And tonight we give that away. We give it with joy. We give it with gratitude. We give it away. And so it is. Amen. This is the time of giving of our gifts and tithes, and I invite you to hold them in your hand as we bless them together. Our offering blessing is divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I give, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Together, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. In the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen.